All right, there. Thank you so much for staying with us. We're still on to business Nigeria. Oil prices settled lower on Thursday after U.S. President Donald Trump repeated a pledge to raise U.S. oil production, unnerving traders a day after the country reported a much bigger than anticipated jump in crude stockpiles. Brent crude futures fell 32 cents or 0.4% to settle at $74.29 a barrel. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude fell 42 cents or 0.6% to sell at $70.61 on Thursday. Trump repeated a pledge to boost U.S. production, already the highest in the world, in a bid to lower oil prices and ease consumer inflation. Oil prices gave up earlier gains after Trump's comments. Still, analysts have questioned whether U.S. oil producers will be willing to pump more barrels in the current market. Dr. Chinan Dikwal is the Vice Chair, African Energy Council. He joins me live via Zoom from Abuja. Thank you so much. It's good to see you in Nigeria. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Tolu. Pleasure to be here.
Well, I think we should start with Donald Trump, his recent policies. Of course, there's been an impact across the board, but we're looking at the markets now, the crude markets, and we see that there's this flip-flop. Immediately he started this, we're going to drill more, we're going to do this and that. So let me just ask you overview of what's been happening and what the impacts are in your understanding.
Lulu, thank you so much for this. I think there are a couple of things that we need to bear in mind as Nigerians, as Africans, that in the oil markets, this is probably the biggest, the most seismic event that we have seen, certainly over the last 20 years, Donald Trump presidency. Now, I appreciate he was here before, the full term before, but I think this one here is quite radical. We're probably in the same, I'll probably say in the same magnitude as, September 9th. 2001, where we have that. But certainly, he is rattling the markets quite a lot. And it's nothing that we haven't heard before. It is the drill, baby drill policy that he's spoken about. Now, he's come up and he's making a lot of pronouncements. A lot of those pronouncements are having real impact on the market. What does drill, baby drill mean? So that's one of the biggest questions. It ultimately means that he's going to prioritize fossil fuels, put them at the center of everything. He's going to increase U.S. production in a way that we haven't seen before. Tolu, just for context, the U.S. today is the largest, is the highest oil and gas producer already in the world. Produces even more crude oil than Saudi Arabia. But Donald Trump wants to come and up the game even higher. So I think the U.S. produces about 12 million barrels per day of crude. He wants to up it even more. Now, doing that, the reality of it is, and this is why you can see the markets responding in the way that they are. If Donald Trump does that, the reality of it is the demand and supply balance that we have seen for the last few years will rupture. Okay, we'll have an oversupplied market, demand will be lower, and of course, if that happens, there'll be a price penalty. Price will come down. Now, when price comes down, what does it mean for us? What does it mean for Nigeria, an oil state? That is real bad news, for us. That's the reality of it, because most of our earnings are crude oil, oil and gas earnings. We need the oil price to be high enough for us to maximize every barrel and to finance our budget. If the price of oil comes down, ultimately that means that, we'd have a huge deficit. We'll start to run a budget deficit, and we've seen that many times. So I think these are the implications for us, and it's understanding and navigating that is very important. In fact, sorry, I'm talking quite a lot now, Tolu, but I'd say this. One of the things that's very important is to make sure that the Minister of Finance fully understands the extent to what is happening right now, okay, with Donald Trump. And then the price point that we have for 2025 needs to be a sensible price point. Last year in 2024, we had, I think, for the budget, for financing the budget, we had something like 77 or 75, I can't remember, dollars per barrel, which, to be honest, we hit it comfortably for the year. I think for this year, we expect a huge amount of turbulence because at a minimum, drill baby drill might mean that there could be an additional 2 million barrels of oil, of crude oil put on the market and oversupply. If 2 million barrels comes onto the market, it'd be very difficult to have oil above $65 per barrel. That's the reality of it.
And of course, if that happens, it's going to impact Nigeria's revenue projections. Clearly, that is what it means for us, and that's not good news at all. Many say the other option we have in this part of the world, or with focus on Nigeria, is to ramp up production. If we can increase production, maybe the volume, we could merge up what we'll lose with regards to pricing. Do you also agree with that?
Very good point there, without a doubt. So in a low price environment, the only lever that you have, if price is low, so let's assume there's an oversupply in 2025 and price crashes, your only lever is to increase production because then you're talking about more volume, higher volume, modest price. You can still, hit decent revenue numbers. But Tolu, bear this in mind. Bear this in mind. Nigeria already is seeing a huge resurgence and a huge increase in our oil output. If you go to January of 2022, the crude oil output from Nigeria was 1.1 million barrels. Go back to December of this year, December of last year, 2024, we increased oil production by 30% in the last 18 months, by about 30%, very significant. Oil production in December was 1.49 million barrels of crude oil per day, which is very significant. But the problem we have now is our OPEC quota is 1.5 million barrels, and we have about 1.49. So we're already at the quota. We are already hitting the ceiling of our OPEC quota. So the question here is, would OPEC be willing to allow us to produce much more? Can they increase our quota? That's a subject for discussion. Now, to say this, I'll be very clear with you, Tolu. The reality of it is, Angola, a member of OPEC, tried to increase their oil production. You remember that quite the OPEC quota. You remember that so well. OPEC pushed back. Angola exited away from OPEC. That's happened. I don't think that will be the case for Nigeria because we have a very strong case, and especially as we saw last year, the UAE were successful in negotiating their oil quota and it got increased for them. So we're hoping that Nigeria can do the same. If we're going to increase our oil quota, maybe to about 2 million barrels of crude oil a day, that would be spectacular because we then have much higher crude. Even if the oil price goes down lower, we still have a buffer there to make sure that we can still earn a decent amount of revenue and to finance our budget.
The campaign against Iran, according to Trump, is still on it, and he said he's open to the deal with Iran. What if that also happens? What do you think would play out in the entire oil market? Don't forget, we still have the Russia-Ukraine war on the other side.
Yeah, so there are a couple of things to bear in mind, right? Donald Trump is a real capitalist. That's the reality of it. And what he wants, and this is the reality, people need to understand this, all his policies are geared, and I know many people are cheering and all of that, which is great, for them. All his policies are geared towards people of the United States of America. He's standing vehemently for him to return value to the U.S. consumer, the U.S. citizens. And I'll give you an example. Donald Trump ran on the premise of drill, baby, drill. Okay? He wants to oversupply the market with crude oil. But you can imagine, if he oversupplies the world with crude oil right now, like I said, price will crash. Now, the reality of it is, in the U.S., there's what we call the shale producers or the lower 48. These are the people who produce oil from shales. Their cost of production is way higher than most places in the world. So if the oil price drops very significantly, the reality of it is they'll be the first out of the market. I don't know if that makes any sense because their cost of production is very high because it's a different technology. So they are, I think, something like, call it $55 per barrel cost of production. So they need oil at the minimum to be $55 for them to be profitable. That's the minimum. Okay. So if he crashes the price of the market, it would have an adverse effect as well on producers in the US. That's number one. But he also understands very much so that if he places sanctions on Iran, and those sanctions are super effective, then they will be, because those volumes get out of the market, then demand obviously consolidates again, and then price. You see what I mean? I apologize then, because he takes those volumes out of the market, there'll be much more oversupply. So the whole point is it's a game that is being played, I think, to return value to U.S. consumers. Certainly, if that happens and there is a deal, I still think that without a doubt, crude oil for this year will be very low. Now, a couple of things as well. Donald Trump, he also ran on the whole point that he wants to taper inflation. If the oil price crashes, that plays right onto his policy, because essentially most U.S. consumers, their prices of their goods and services becomes much lower because most of the goods and services that we have are, the inflation for them is actually a core part of that is transportation of goods and services, which is, basically, petrol. So if that's being tapered, then you would see very clearly again that to the U.S. consumer, he would return value because inflation becomes much lower. Goods become much cheaper, for them. But the whole thing is a really, really complex game, and it's a balancing act. And I think this is what you can see very, 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 very effectively.
Interestingly, and I thank you for really helping us break this down. Let's touch on the refining space before we wrap this conversation up. We see Africa playing a very key role in refining at the moment. Just a few days ago, Dangote Refinery sent cargoes of refined products to Saudi Arabia. I think that's good news coming from this end. How do you see that also affecting the refining space? Because many say Africa seems to now be playing a very important role. What will happen to all those refineries we used to have in Rotterdam? And you know what I'm talking about. All of those businesses, they're not going to be getting so much dollars as they used to get. How would that reshape the market in its entirety?
I think I'm going to answer this a bit emotionally, if I've got to say. And what that means is, see, I think the way, without a doubt, we've been counted out. When I say we, Africa and Nigeria has been counted out on many fronts. When Dangote started this refinery, very few people gave him a chance and said it's possible. Now, I'm going to say this, bear in mind, the crude oil market, the petrol and refining market is one of the most complex in the world. You have huge cabals and, people on there. This man has been able to come from the bottom, take it on, finalize, the whole refinery, which was nearly impossible. Right now we're producing, very much so. Lots of the queues we have are nearly gone. There's now an exporting crude. What does exportation of crude mean? Earning foreign exchange into the country, something we haven't had before. And especially when I say that, I mean for refined value-added products. So think about this. This is a value-added product. This is not cocoa. This is not crude oil. Okay, this is not crude oil. This is not sesame seed. That is commodity. You haven't processed it. You literally just take it on, put it onto a ship, and you're sending. This is the product, which is produced in Nigeria, is gone through processing in Nigeria. Value has been added to this product in Nigeria. Somebody has paid tax because of that in Nigeria. Our economy has grown. All the people working on Dangote Refinery are being paid money for adding value into that petrol that's gone into a ship. So our economy is growing because of that. It goes onto the market. We're returning foreign exchange. It's extremely significant, without a doubt. It's extremely significant. And what I would say, actually, that's perhaps more significant is this. My question is, now that he's proven that this is doable with all of what we have, all the problems that we have, what other industries can other people take on too? Could we look at fertilizer in a very big way? Could we look at petrochemicals in a big way? Could we look at the cocoa market in a big way? And instead of just putting the cocoa we harvest, we just put it onto a ship and send it away to somebody, we start to do the processing here and take it to the market. What's exciting about the export to Saudi Arabia is this man has demonstrated without a doubt that the business model can work. The business model of not simply selling raw resources, crude resources, raw resources without putting any value into them. He's demonstrated that. And I'm hoping that other industrialists can understudy this and start to take on other verticals. Tolu, you know this so well. If you think about India, Reliance Industries, run by Mukesh Ambani, started off in India. They're exporting the largest amount of petrochemicals in the world. So many verticals that they're going into. You look at, look at Gautam Adani, the Adani Group, with all of what they're doing. Look at the Tata Group. All of these are Indian companies that started in India. The Tata Group started in India, serving Indian markets. And then before you know it, they're now exporting so much value to the West. The Tata Group, they owned Land Rover, Jaguar in the UK. They own a huge chunk of Starbucks. Name it. This model can work. And I think Dangote has demonstrated it for the very first time that a lowly Nigerian can come up against all the odds of power and no power and water challenges and literally come up with a product that we can refine here, put value into it. The person who's working on that plant has paid tax in Lagos. Yeah. And because it's paid tax in Lagos, our economy has grown and sent it to the market. So it's really exciting. Sorry, I get passionate when I talk about this.
Yeah, I know. I see that. I must thank you so much, Dr. Chinan Dikwal. Thank you so much, Vice Chair, African Energy Council. Enjoy Nigeria. I hope to see you again soon.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, there. Cheers. Bye. All right. Well, it's time.